item 2. So we shall do that. I don't know who's on, Dean, so I don't know who has had an opportunity to read the minutes or go through the minutes. But I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes, accept the minutes.
This is Christine Balderston. I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Do I have a second?
This is Chris Laws. I second.
All right. For the executive board members, is there anybody who is opposed to adopting, approving the minutes from the last meeting? Actually, I guess I should ask Dean, do we have a quorum here?
I'm checking that now. Everybody's kind of signing in. And I gotta take a look at the chat here. Wrong. Do you want to, should we go the other way around and call roll?
Oh, we can do that.
I'm not seeing everybody. Let me see. Oh, nope. So Glenn, Dean, Ron, Chris Laws, Marilyn, and Christine is who I see.
So that's 6.
That's 6.
Yeah.
Out of 13. So we need a majority.
Yeah, you need a 50% plus 1.
All right.
So we don't have that.
No.
Okay.
Taking another look to make sure, or we give it another minute or two as people are starting to log in.
Yeah, just before we close the meeting, we'll double check and make sure. So we'll just table that right now. Leave the motion out there, leave the second out there, and if we get in a quorum, then we'll take a vote, and if not, then we'll just vacate all of that stuff and move on to the next meeting.
Okay.
This is
Go ahead.
this is Katie. I was just going to suggest if we do a roll call when that happens, it might be easiest for those of us who do have voting abilities.
Dean, I'm gonna let you do that because I don't have a list right here in front of me as to who is.
Okay. If everybody can hear me okay, Glenn,
Yes.
myself, Ron Sigmund I saw is on. Chris,
Somebody's got to go.
Chris Laws I saw. Theo, are you here?
I am here.
Ah, okay. Jeff McCarron. Not hearing. So Gil said that he wouldn't be on, and Jeff is not here. So Katie, Marilyn, and Christine are on. So we definitely have a quorum at this point. We're just missing 2 members.
Okay.
All right, then I'll repose the question. Is there anybody of the voting members who has an objection to adopting the minutes from the last meeting? Going once? Going twice? All right, we're going to approve the minutes then, and that motion will have passed. Thank you very much. All right, next bullet item is the legislative regulatory update. I don't know that we have anything specific. Has anybody out there got anything that they're aware of?
Session.
Anybody from the county side of things on county regulations? We'll get out of the state. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is, I don't know how applicable it is to emergency planning, but we are bringing our proposed amendments to our existing oil and gas regulations to the Board of County Commissioners tomorrow morning.
Are there any substantive changes?
Yes, there's quite a few substantive changes.
You want to give us the executive overview?
Sure. We're proposing several changes. One of the probably most contentious, well, there's probably two contentious changes, but the most is we're proposing an increase in the setback distance from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet. It's not a hard setback, so there is an ability to get a waiver from that setback based on site-specific conditions and other mitigation measures that can be implemented. And we're also requiring continuous noise monitoring during the initial phases up until the start of production. If a pad is located within, just a little over 2,000 feet of existing residential development. We are also requiring a cumulative impacts assessment be provided for each proposed oil and gas facility. We're maintaining our alternative location analysis requirements. So at the conceptual review phase, each proposed development must provide 3 potential locations and some other documentation so that staff and other referring agencies have an opportunity to evaluate which location best meets the proposed intent of protecting public health, safety, welfare, and the environment. And then they can proceed with through the development review process for that particular location. Part of that analysis is the cumulative impacts analysis. So they need to evaluate, included in that assessment is looking at other oil and gas facilities as well as industrial land uses located within a mile of the proposed location. And we're also proposing a requirement to identify disproportionately impacted communities that may be located within a mile of the proposed location, and a specific engagement plan for that community.
Yeah, so there are some pretty substantive changes. Does it look like it's going to be adopted without too much pushback from the oil and gas companies, or does that look like it's something going to be?
Yeah, I mean, throughout the whole process, we've held, I think, 15 or 16 stakeholder engagement meetings. We have had 2 drafts, and during both set of draft revisions, we have addressed substantive comments. And so I do think at this point, their primary, I think, remaining concern is the noise monitoring requirement. However, it's not that much more than what the COGCC is already requiring in their new rulemaking. So I do think that we've kept the board up to date through various study sessions on the proposed changes. So I don't see, knock on wood, I don't see the proposed amendments not being approved tomorrow.
Just out of personal curiosity, the noise monitoring, are there mitigation efforts that are recommended to do that if they don't pass, or does it just restrict the hours that they can make certain levels of noise?
Well, they're required, I guess also part of the proposed changes is that they will have to provide, they already were required to provide noise modeling at the application phase to help determine if their mitigation measures adequately attenuated sound levels. The new requirement is that they conduct, in addition to that, they do conduct continuous noise monitoring. That way, if they're, and this really is to address the fact that I think it's almost 60, maybe 70% of the complaints we receive are related to noise. And so they will be required to include DBC and DBA, so both C-weighted and A-weighted in that noise monitoring. And it's really so that they can identify when they may exceed the allowable maximum levels and what operations might have been occurring at that time and what additional mitigation measures might be required.
Well, it sounds like it's positive movement as far as I'm concerned. I think you'll probably still find some people who are going to complain about the noise, because what we have had, my experience has been that even with the decibel readings, there are some noises just seem to be more irritating than others. So
Yeah, that tends to be the C-weighted, so DBC, and so that's why we're requiring the continuous monitoring to include that as well.
So even though the decibel ratings are lower, they may be acceptable as far as the volume is concerned, but it's one of those things that still irritates the neighbors.
Yep.
Thank you very much. That's good news. That's wonderful.
Thanks, Glenn.
I like to see Adams County on the front edge of some of this stuff. I think it makes it easier for the rest of us.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to, has time available, the public hearings are always broadcast on YouTube. It starts at 9:30. The oil and gas amendments probably won't be heard till 10:30. There's one land use case for a billboard that's going to be heard above ahead of ours, but probably starting around 10:30.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any questions? Any other questions? Hearing none. Any other regulatory updates? No. All right.
Nope.
Dean, you got the list of people who are attending there, so I'm going to impose upon you to kind of go down the bullet points here and see who we got.
Okay. Basically, we have some new guests from the Denver LEPC. If they have any report to add, they're welcome to chime in at this time.
Hey, this is Courtney Burnett. Thanks for having me. Just trying to find new avenues to collaborate with the other LEPCs across the region. So just here today, we're finalizing some things on our hazmat plan this year. But I think other than that, that's the biggest update I have. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Courtney. Welcome aboard. Any other local agencies? I know we have some people on from local chemical facilities. Does anyone have any updates? Hearing none. Tri-County Health, any updates?
Hi, it's Lisa Olivito. Really no updates from us. We're just trying to move forward with recovery and reconstitution, and then hopefully getting back to our routine work and programmatic responsibilities.
Thank you.
Before we stray too far from Lisa, I would just like to thank her for still being on board here. And I would like to mention to the group that I have been remiss. I have a plaque for her from the Adams Jeffco Hazmat Authority. She's had on the board for a number of years, and I have a thank you plaque, and I haven't seen her because we haven't done any in-person meetings anywhere. Lisa, I still owe it to you. It's still in my car, and I don't think I have a home address or a home phone number. I think all I've got is everything from the health department. So if you want to shoot that to me next time I'm out in the west end of town, I will give you a buzz or do something. Mail it to
I'll send you an email, Glenn. I worked hard to get back here on Adams County LEPC, so thanks for welcoming me.
Well,
missed you guys.
I have a thing for you. I'd love to do an in-person presentation, and I just Thank you.
We'll meet up.
Okay.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right, anybody else? Back to you, Dean. I interrupted.
Not at all. I'm just kind of busy writing down. Thank you, everyone. Continue to put your name in the chat if you're attending, if you haven't already done so. That helps us keep track of who did attend. So state of Colorado, any state representatives? Nobody's jumping on. Federal partners. I know that Fran is off, so I believe David Crescenti is going to.
Yes, Dean, this is Chemical Security Inspector David Crescenti. I'm stepping in this month for Fran. I just wanted to inform the LEPC that DHS last week started a DHS CISA Stop Ransomware campaign. If you want more information about the campaign, I have posted a link within the meeting chat. As far as chemical facilities go, we're still doing on-site visits to our covered regulated facilities, and they are in the process of still meeting our risk-based performance standards. One of those things that they're doing that's new is implementing personal surety, which is just a check for terrorist ties with their personnel who have access to chemicals and their critical assets. Other than that, I have nothing further to add, unless anybody has a question.
Well, thank you, David. Anyone else from our federal partners, EPA, anyone else? Hearing none. Under others, I was going to have introduce Tron Clark, who's doing some interesting work, and I'd like to let him have an opportunity to let us know about that.
Hi, Dean, thank you. Just a quick update. I'm Tron Clark with the Colorado Preparedness and Response Network. We're an industry collaboration with fire departments and city and county OEMs and just anybody doing first response in general. We've been working with Lieutenant Cali with Mountain View Fire Rescue and Crestone Peak Resources on non-PFAS fire foam. With 19 states with active and pending legislation and more on the way, and then upcoming EPA rules, identifying an effective product has been an ongoing scope of work for our nonprofit. And so this Wednesday we'll be presenting on that. Lieutenant Kelly with Mountain View Fire will. We've done some small and large scale testing, and then we're also this Friday have got large scale testing for mutual aid considerations. Many of the departments in the area have different fire foam products, so we want to see how those behave to an actual fire. So we're doing a lot of ongoing work. If you've interacted with any of these companies that are selling these products, there's a number of products out there on the market. It's really hard to digest and just sort through what's an effective tool with PFAS fire foams eventually becoming banned. So if you have any questions, I can help facilitate some inquiries or just questions and Q&A, etc. On these products. We've identified two that seem to perform really well. We want to do some more testing on that, especially with the mutual aid considerations. And then I know working with CDPHE, we're probably going to have Lieutenant Kelly put on a half-day workshop as well. So just to really get into the science of the testing that's occurred. So if you have any questions, I can put my contact information into the chat. Feel free to reach out to me. And thank you, Dean.
Yeah, Tron, I'd like to throw a question out there. This is Ron Summers with Suncor. I'm the new kid on the block, but I come from Chevron, where I was involved in our worldwide corporate testing, training areas around the foam. So I'd be interested in participating and taking a look at some of these events that you got planned and kind of let you guys know we've been doing. And we're in the process now of trying to get rid of all of our foam. So we're taking a bunch of it out to be sampled, and then make that big change. So whatever I can do, I'd really like to keep involved and keep informed of what's going on.
Thank you, Ron. I put my contact information in the chat function. Please shoot me an email and let's chat after. I coincidentally just met with Chevron's new ERC for the Rockies just last week, and he mentioned something similar as well with Chevron's experience over the past couple of years looking at these foams. So be happy to collaborate and share information and invite you to some other functions that we have going on.
Good information. Tron, the question I was going to ask you is, do you know if there's any disposal mechanism discussion that's being had yet? I know the question I get from most of the fire departments is, how do they get rid of the PFAS that they currently have that they are no longer going to be allowed to use without incurring huge disposal costs as a haz waste? I know CDPHE, the health department, state health department, had a program that they were starting or working on or developing or something, but I never heard anything anymore of that. Is anything that you are aware of any programs that have come to fruition that will help the local fire departments get rid of their stuff that they're no longer going to be able to store or use?
Yeah, the best person to speak to that would be David Donnie with CDPHE. He's the emerging contaminants coordinator for the state, and his role is really spearheading what the two acting House bills that were passed within the last 2 years. From what he's going to be speaking at our meeting on this Wednesday on the buyback program that the state has in place. He's providing just a brief update. So I don't have all the information on that status. We're going to share it post that meeting. But any fire department should direct those inquiries to David Donnie at CDPHE. I know from what's been shared with me, and I need to confirm it, but my understanding is with pending EPA rules, it's very challenging to dispose of PFAS fire foam materials right now. So pretty much the only place, to my knowledge, that was an effective place was the Clean Harbors in Kimball. I think it's Kimball, Nebraska. But my understanding is that they've met their threshold for allowable limits for disposing of that product, and so it could be some time before, whether it's a company that has these products or a fire department or state can dispose of it. So, but David Donnie is the best person that can speak to that and the nuances.
Okay, and if they are doing a presentation on Wednesday, they may want to just make sure that they touch on that, because I know distribution of information is probably the toughest thing in Colorado. And I have been referring people to both CDPHE as well as the State Fire Chiefs Association, but I don't know that it goes anywhere from there. I know the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets, and usually it's inverse. The larger city departments seem to find out about things first, and it's the smaller rural areas that have absolutely no money whatsoever that end up being the tail end Charlies and just have no budget whatsoever to try and dispose of anything that's a haz waste, and yet they're sitting on some of these things that they're no longer going to be allowed to use or to store. So
I think I'm going to coordinate with David Donnie to see what he can do as far as communication on that. A conversation I had with him a couple of weeks ago for clarification is, from my understanding, is the state's not telling fire departments not to use fluorinated these foams. It banned, the current House bills ban the sale and purchase and the use of it in training. However, they're not, they don't have any direction to tell a fire department to not use the tool that's best for that application at this time. So that doesn't mean that there's, future legislation that could come out that could impact that. But from my understanding, CDPHE is not taking a position that they can't use it.
Yeah, that's correct. They can use it. They can use it during operational periods and stuff as needed. They can no longer use it for training. And I guess it's one of those things that structure fires and petroleum fuel fires and things like that just don't happen that often, thank goodness. So they've got phones that are either out of date or will be out of date, even for the operational side of things. Like I said, it's just questions that come up to me all the time. How are we going to get rid of this stuff? And my answer is right now, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think the state knows as well, because they try to put out an RFP for a vendor to collect these fire, whether it's the pails or the totes, and then store it while they work through the process of disposing of it. And to my knowledge, no companies bid on the work. And I was kind of surprised by that.
We've been looking, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. At Suncor, we've been looking with and working with Clean Harbors. We're even going so far as to putting an additive into the foam as a defoamer to see if maybe they can incinerate it or inject it down hole. So we haven't got the conclusion yet, but hopefully that's going to be an alternative for us.
Okay. Yeah, there's I know that that CDPHE had been working with Clean Harbors, and so I'll tie you with the contact, Ron, with the state, and it'd be good for you to liaison with them as well. And
I know at Chevron, our fire chiefs, we all got so frustrated with this whole process that we suggested that we all just go back to protein foam. It just smells bad.
I've heard that many times.
All right, good information. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I know our local fire communities will appreciate it as well. Just because you're out there, Greg Mosher, I saw that you're out there. I don't know whether anybody from Westminster Fire has had this discussion yet, but it may be one of those things that you want to make them aware that Wednesday they're having this presentation.
Yeah, I was just talking with one of our folks here, and my understanding is we got rid of all of our PFAS about a year ago, but I'll pass it on and make sure that they're aware of it.
Good deal. Thank you.
Are you guys going to send out the information on the meeting just in case they do need to attend it?
Ron, is that something, Dean, is that something we can do?
Yeah, Tron or either link me into that meeting and I will send out a link to the LEPC or however you prefer to do it. But I'm happy to send it out to our contact list.
Great, thank you.
And Glenn, this is Mark Schuman. I have been working with the state as well. I do know part of the delay is they had intended to incinerate all the old foams. However, EPA has rescinded permission to incinerate, and they are evaluating proper disposal methods. And so it's still the state's goal to collect all the old foam once there's a disposal site. All the disposal sites, such as Clean Harbors, were asked to submit a bid to store the foam until a decision was made, and nobody bid on it. So there's nowhere to store it till a decision's made on how to dispose of it. The state also has money from the fees they're charging for the fuels being transported through the state. They do intend to reimburse fire departments for new foam they have purchased. So that's still on the board as well. So it would be good to definitely, if they're going to have, as you know, Glenn, I've got the regional tabletop exercise on Wednesday, but would definitely like to see a recording or hear a recording of the meeting if it's available.
Okay, we'll just try and keep track of that and make sure that it gets put out through the LEPC to the fire representatives, and hopefully the fire community can spread the word amongst themselves. I just find it super ironic that they want to incinerate firefighting foam. I see a Saturday Night Live sketch there somehow. All right, moving on. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if there's anybody else that has a report to give, I'll wait a sec. All right, hearing none, I'm gonna go through the spill reporting. We actually had a ton of spill reports since the last meeting update. So I'm gonna try and go through these quickly, but I've got 13 of them, and I'll just go through them pretty briefly. We had on May 22nd and also June 1st, Suncor reported discovery of surface water sheen on Sand Creek, 524. Subsequently, I'm not going to give all the micrograms and so forth, but they did find the sheen. They investigated it, and the results of that come later in this report. On the 2nd of June, South Adams County Water and Sanitation District reported blockage of a sewer line. It sounds like it was baby wipes, resulted in a backup of approximately 25 gallons of sewage to the street and to a storm drain. On June 17th, Suncor notified of an So2 release from Plant 1 main flare related to a startup. Approximately 1.06 tons of So2 were released. On 6/24, Rolla Rail Yard in Henderson, a small amount of alcohol NOS was released due to a fault mechanism on a rail car. No injuries, fatalities reported in the incident, and no waterways have been affected. And it sounds like it got cleaned up. City of North Glen on 6/24 also was called to help with a cleanup of paint and water mixed coming from an apartment. By the time they arrived, it had been hosed down onto the pavement, which led to a gulch. 6/26, tractor trailer released an unknown amount of diesel and motor oil to asphalt and concrete and into a drainage ditch at 144th and Sable. State Patrol considers the release contained and cleaned up and has closed this case on their end. 7/2, July 2nd, sulfur recovery unit tripped on the H25 stack, which resulted in a release of 625 pounds of sulfur dioxide, again at Suncor. That is back under the limit. The event is over. And let's see, 7/2, that's July 2nd. KP Kaufman Company, a contractor conducted a limited subsurface investigation around one of their tank batteries. I have all this information if anybody needs actual details. As part of due diligence for a future water pipeline, during the course of this assessment, ERO identified soil and groundwater petroleum contamination within the footprint of the facility and south of the facility. On July 3rd, due to an unknown cause at present, an asphalt heating system caught fire. The fire and oil spread to the 3600 and 3500 blocks while 5 fire trucks were spraying water onto the fire. Sounds like a pretty big fire. They covered it with concrete sand. The spill was originally to cement pad and surface dirt, and that was all recovered and vacuumed up 6 truckloads. No waterways were impacted. On July 7th, probable blocked line resulted in 4 drains backing up to backing up at a trickle to an alley, and then to a ditch, and then to a storm drain. The owner of the strip mall has not been reached yet, although the caller that reported this has been trying to get a hold of them. On July 8th, Suncor reported an So2 release. Hole in the plant number 2 thermal reactor resulted in an exceedance of the RQ for sulfur dioxide. The plant was shut down for repairs, and a total of 6.44 tons of So2 were released. And then on July 9th, Suncor released a summary of its sheen investigation. Given the elimination of the outfall piping integrity as a potential cause for the sheen, basically they attributed it to a fuel spill. And then on 7/13, carpet cleansing van was observed dumping carpet washings into a storm drain. The caller would like to discuss if there was anything she can do about this. Well, I don't know. That was what was in the report. And then we did, I'm sorry. So that was the reports we had as I was preparing for this meeting. Any questions about spill reporting?
To reference that last one on the carpet cleaning materials being put into a drain, do we need to contact somebody to do follow up on that, or is that?
As far as I know, not. I believe that, I mean, that came from a report from Tri-County Health and CDPHE. So that would have been their spill line that got the report of it, and they would have contacted the appropriate entities. They did not say that we needed to do further investigation on it. But it also, it sounds like a preliminary report, so I don't have a, usually on these, I don't get follow-up of whether or not, unless it says in the report that it was cleaned up, that I won't really know, but I can follow up for the LEPC if you'd like to know.
Okay, that's something that happens on a pretty regular basis. The carpet cleaning companies are taking their wastewater and putting it down in the drains. And it's one of those things that it's just for the sake of conversation here. If they have a permit from a publicly owned water treatment facility, they can do that, but it is a permitted thing. If they're dumping it into a drain that leads into a waterway or something like that, of course, it's illegal. We used to run into them all on a regular basis where people would just drive down the road and dump their water, or they'd stop someplace on a cul-de-sac or something and dump it in the gutter. They used to even go as far as parking in a car wash, and they would drain their water while they were washing their trucks, which was kind of sneaky. But it is something that we need to watch, and it is something that when I say we, it's more from the law enforcement side, but it is something that needs to be addressed from some of these carpet cleaning companies, because they will do that if they are allowed to. And technically speaking, it is a violation. So just FYI.
Good to know. Okay, any other old business? All right, let me switch screens. I had prepared a DARA presentation, and I will, what that means it will be obvious in a couple minutes here. Let me just switch screens to pull that up. And
Dean, while you're doing that, under new business, I was going to ask you, is Brad Cogburn, is anybody from Brighton Fire in the meeting? I was going to ask you, the cold storage facility that's being built, I guess, north of the Staples distribution center out here off of Highway 76. Do we know when that's supposed to come online?
I don't right now. I can let me email my permit tech and see if she has information.
Okay, because I'm assuming, and this is an assumption on my part, I'm assuming they're going to be using anhydrous ammonia as their cooling component, similar to Miller Coors or Budweiser or many of the sports facilities that have hockey rings and things like that. But I haven't heard anything from a hazmat side. I haven't heard anything as far as quantities or when they're supposed to come online, or whether or not we're supposed to be included in any kind of preliminary emergency response planning and emergency response training for their people. So if you would just kind of throw that out there into the universe and see, you know which facility I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's called Keras Cold Storage.
My understanding is it's going to be the largest cold storage facility in the state. And right now there's a huge shortage of cold storage certainly within the metro area, but it's going to be a big deal. And I don't think it needs to be a huge concern. I just didn't know where we were on it.
So our other plan reviewer did the reviews on it. I looked at the project is because the sprinkler system, if anyone has never heard of a quell suppression system, it's kind of new and it's specialized, and it's specifically made for tall rack systems. And it's really neat if you haven't seen it. The sprinkler head is gigantic. It looks like a fake toy sprinkler head compared to what we're used to. So it's a phenomenal system that I've looked at, but I didn't do an in-depth review on it. Our other reviewer did that. But I hadn't heard of any red flags, but I'll contact them and I'll get back to you on that for sure.
Yeah, Chief, we use a lot of those in petrochem, especially our plant doesn't have, our refinery doesn't have them, but refineries that still have hydrofluoric acid use those things. And I came from a facility that had 400,000 pounds of anhydrous. So that stuff works really, really well.
I'll get back to you guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right, Dino.
Okay. Yeah. Just let me know. Is everyone seeing the full screen of this presentation at all, or?
No,
How does that?
There it is.
Okay, and it says Colorado Designated Emergency Response Authority.
That's affirmative.
Okay, so what this presentation is a quick overview of the Colorado Designated Emergency Response Authority. And let me see if I can get it to. Okay, so what that means is it's under a Colorado law, there's a requirement that each county and municipality designate an emergency response authority for responding to hazardous substance incidents. The default DARA for a municipality is the fire authority. The default county DARA is the sheriff. The state patrol is the DARA on any federal, state, or county highway located outside municipal city limits. So that's kind of the basics. So one of the questions is when sheriffs hear that they're the DARA, they're like, well, do we need a hazmat team? And it's important to understand that the DARA responsibilities are administrative in nature. You're supposed to oversee that a cleanup occurs, not necessarily sending a whole bunch of specially trained deputies out to clean up a spill. So that was one of the first things to kind of clear up for people. Oops, I think I skipped one. And it's not letting me go back. So, so I'll leave that screen up and I'll just let you know that DARA is responsible for providing or conducting emergency response to a hazardous substance incident. The DARA may fulfill this obligation directly, so they could have a hazmat team. They may fulfill this obligation by agreements with private entities, such as a local business or non-governmental organizations. But the objective is just to ensure that the appropriate cleanup actions are taken to remediate the site to pre-incident conditions per county, state, and federal regulations, thus protecting life, safety, the environment, and the economic well-being of the jurisdiction. So the legal authority for this, there are a whole lot of these, and I'm not going to give you the entire list of legislative laws and so forth, but basically a couple of them are listed here, defining hazardous substance, hazardous waste violations, and then there's quite a long list of additional legal authorities, which I can provide if anybody's really interested in digging into that. So what is a hazardous substance? And this is kind of funny digging into this. Basically, a hazardous substance is a substance that is hazardous under Colorado or federal laws. It's a pretty broad, obviously, definition, and it includes all kinds of different substances, but basically bad stuff that we all probably can recognize. And there are various lists and so forth in the federal regulatory and then also locally. So a hazardous substance incident would be an incident where an actual or threatened emergency circumstance results in or may result in harm to the environment or the public. This includes spilling, dumping, abandonment of hazardous waste. In response to a hazardous substance incident is any emergency response that are actions necessary to contain the spill and relieve the adverse effects on people or the environment. And the judgment of the DARA or incident commander controls what that response will be. So one of the questions is, since we're talking about private property and things, can a DARA respond to incidents on private property? And the answer is kind of. So one of the questions and the kind of the picture down in the corner here is a truck that ran off the road and into a farmer's field and tipped over and spilled. And so in that kind of situation, it is the property owner that is the responsible party. If the property owner does not seem to be cleaning it up or taking the appropriate actions, the DARA may intervene and bring in emergency response in their judgment if there's an imminent danger. Oops, skipped again.
Dean, I have a quick question. Should I wait to the end or jump in or?
No, go ahead.
Is there any, maybe it's just common practice too, in terms of the time frame for the owner of the property to initiate cleanup?
I'm not entirely sure. I'll kind of leave that to Glenn and everybody. I didn't find anything in there. Obviously, immediate response is kind of what's talked about. Again, anything to prevent the damage, either to health or the environment. So it's ASAP. Glenn, do you have any?
It's one of those things that goes back to that big word, reasonably.
Okay.
There has to be. It's basically as quickly as is practicable, not practical, but practicable. I think it's the way Tim Gablehouse explains it. They have a duty to report it. It doesn't have to be immediately because they don't have to stop their emergency efforts to make a report, but yet they can't delay reporting it for other purposes. So it's really kind of vague, and it comes into the levels of responses. Like when you're talking about private property, can the DARA respond on a private property? Well, yeah, they can if there's something that you can define as a reasonable hazard or reasonable threat.
Hey, Paul, this is Elizabeth
to the environment.
Marshall here in Brighton.
From a corporate standpoint, it's
I was
like
calling with a question about the Keras cold storage that was brought to my attention.
you're not going to. Someone's got their mics on.
Some questions about any hazardous materials that are going to be on.
Oh, that's Brighton Fire. Anyway, to answer the question, it's like from a corporate standpoint, Suncor, for example, if their product isn't leaving their property, then we're not going to construe it to be an emergency because that's part of the business that they're in. If, for example, you had a traffic rollover or something else on some other facility, Home Depot or something like that, where they had a chemical spill, then yes, then the DARA has the authorization to require, demand, or institute a hazmat response to that. I don't know if that helped or not.
Yeah, that does help. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And typically from, this is Lisa with Tri-County, from a public health standpoint for our statute, we depending on the incident on private property, it's 24 to 48 hours to where they get the ball rolling. So if it's not, I mean, if it's severe, it's an immediate response. So.
Hey, I just have a quick question going back to the tanker rollover on the farmer's property. Is not the that private property owners the responsible party, not the shipper or the chemical company involved?
Whoever's in care and custody, whoever has control is the primary responsibility. So in that particular case, yes, it would be the trucking company that would be the primary responsibility. However, on private property, ultimately speaking, if you're having to have a cleanup done or you're having to have something done and it's Joe and Bob's trucking and they don't have the money to do it or they don't have it, then ultimately it will defer down to the property owner. But yes, initially it's whoever is in control of the hazardous material.
One thing we might look at is this is statutory versus civil. So the farmer may sue to get his money back for the cleanup that he may have had to incur. If I understand correctly, they could go after the company, but the responsibility would still lie with the property owner. Is that correct, Glenn?
Yes, that's correct. And the thing with the DARE, the Designated Emergency Response Authority, all they're looking for is to make sure that something is done, to make sure that the cleanup is done properly, legally, effectively, efficiently, and in a timely manner. And cost is really irrelevant, but ultimately someone is going to pay for it. So there's kind of a series of steps that you would go through. First, you would be looking at the trucking company. Second, you'd be looking at any other outside factors. It's like if it was a car crash and somebody else caused the crash, then that other driver's insurance could also be held responsible for the property owner. But the bottom line is the DARE is not going to hesitate or not going to wait to get some kind of an action taken. They're not going to wait for the property owner, for example, to allow this truck to just drain out into the creek or into the river or something to that effect without taking some kind of action, regardless of who's paying for it in the long run.
Thank you. So on this slide, it basically says if they don't know who did it, let's say the farmer just wakes up in the morning and somebody tossed a few barrels out onto his property, it's then going to fall to the property owner to get it cleaned up. And we see this sometimes where we've had a couple of abandoned containers of oil or something left on the side of the road. Luckily, that's not a massive spill or anything, but then that does go, if it's by the side of the road, it might be something again that would go to highway patrol, state patrol. But at any rate, so this slide just basically says if it's public owned, if it's county or whatever, then it's the responsible jurisdiction. And then getting reimbursed, the jurisdiction has a right to claim reimbursement for all reasonable and necessary emergency response costs. A responsible party is defined as the person, as Glenn said earlier, with care, custody, and control of the hazardous substance. Contractor can be hired to provide these response services, and that can be by the private entity to the DARA. Private entities may also directly pursue reimbursement if the claim has been approved by the DARA. And then regarding these agreements, again, the claim has to be approved by the DARA. There has to be a standing agreement, and states that the private entity will not be paid by the DARA. And then the DARA and fire department have the authority to request information from anyone storing chemicals based upon a chemical list and thresholds in the statute. There is an exclusion for chemicals in typical consumer sized packaging. So a can of paint or something you buy off the shelf at the hardware store. And also farm and ranch agricultural chemicals are excluded. And that's the presentation. Let me see if I can stop the sharing. Do we have our screen back now?
No, we're still in the presentation.
Okay. There we go.
There you go. You're back.
All right. So let me pull.
What it comes down to is if you hear the acronym DARA, Designated Emergency Response Authority, that's what it is. On the government side, we toss it around a lot because it's one of the notifications that we have to make, and it's one of the responsibilities that either the fire department or the sheriff's office or whomever the city council or the county commissioners have appointed to be the DARA. It is a reporting requirement, same as state patrol or same as state health department. And it does come up, like I said, it's when hazmat response happens, one of the questions is usually asked is, has the DARA been notified? And we get a lot of deer in the headlights looks when you ask that question. So there's a lot of people who don't know what the DARA is. It's a statute that's unique to Colorado, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know that any other state has it the way we have it. And historically, it comes from a hazmat incident that happened about 125,000 years ago is the way it feels now. I-25 and I-70 were closed for almost a whole day. Imagine closing the road, I-25 and I-70, over a truck that was leaking hydraulic fluid. But nobody knew exactly what it was because it had to do with torpedoes that the Navy was shipping and blah, 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 blah. Interesting story, but that's where it came about. And if you hear the acronym DARA, that's what we're talking about. Thanks, Dean. Moving on. Any questions? I don't think I have anything additional as far as announcements are concerned. Anybody else have anything? I don't see anything in the chat. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Any questions, recommendations, suggestions, or ideas that we should be talking about? Seeing none. The next meeting, September 27th. And I know at some point in time, we'd like to get back to either a hybrid meeting where we've got virtual and in person. I don't know that we'll ever be able to get rid of the off-site meetings because it really, really works out real well for a lot of people. So they want to keep that. But our next meeting date is the 27th of November. I know Ron Sigmund and Dean and I have talked because the county has gone to a closed on Mondays methodology. They're working 4-day work weeks. I know like Westminster, they're closed on Fridays. So some of that is happening. So I don't know whether we're going to have to change our meeting dates or what have you, but that'll all come up at some point in time. But I have nothing else. So Dean, I'll let you wrap up and close the meeting. And if anybody else has any comments, please don't hesitate to jump in. Thank you all for being here. LEPC, if you want to talk about the LEPC conference, Dean, just real quick.
Oh gosh, I have to pull up the dates and so forth. I didn't have that in front of me. I'm sorry. Caught me with my LEPC not ready there. But we do have an LEPC conference coming up, and I actually should have maybe put that on the agenda. And give me 1 second here.
It's September 7, 8, 9, and 10. 7, 8, 9, 10.
And that's up in Breckenridge.
The LEPCs get to send, I think they have 2 representatives per LEPC that the state pays for out of the Hazardous Materials Emergency Response Training Program grant, whatever the HMET grant. It's up to the chair to select those people. I know the recommendation was to send Dean and Chris Laws from the Sheriff's Office. I will be going, whether I pay through the authority. Generally speaking, our LEPC is big enough that we get more than 2 positions paid for the grant. Stephanie, I don't know whether you heard anything back. Stephanie Hackett has expressed an interest in going. Greg Mosher often goes, so I don't know whether that's something that's in the works. if you have any interest in going to the LEPC conference, please contact either me or Dean, and we will get your name on a list to try and get paid for by the state, because as other LEPCs don't use up their positions, we snag onto them pretty quickly and take them away to fill those seats. It's worthwhile. The first day is a half a day. It's a LEPC 101. And then the emergency managers meeting is in the evening. And then the next day is a full day of what's going on statewide with multiple LEPCs. And then the third day, I think is a Friday, is a half day. But they do pay for your lodging. It's in Breckenridge. Worthwhile conference. If you have some interest, talk to me or talk to Dean, and we will try and do what we can do to get you on the list to get paid. Sorry, Dean, I kind of jumped in there.
Oh, appreciate it, because I didn't have all that information ready, so no problem. Thanks, Glenn. So if nothing else, at this time, we can have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Anybody want to jump in?
I'll make a motion.
Second, Christine.
All right. Motion made and seconded. I believe this meeting has been adjourned.
Thank you.
Very much, everybody, for coming and taking your
Thank
time.
you.
You appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.